Welcome to Microsoft Dynamics CRM 2015 Search New Features. My name is Dana Martins, and in this topic we'll be reviewing changes to the search functionality introduced in the CRM 2015 release. With the CRM 2015 release, new search capabilities are introduced, and some of the previously existing functionality is more discoverable. If you're familiar with prior releases of Dynamics CRM, you're likely familiar with the Quick Find functionality, which allows you to quickly search for a specific type of record, such as an account or contact. One of the limitations with that feature is that it does not let you search across multiple entities at once. For example, if you tried to search for a person such as Nancy Anderson, you might not know if she exists in CRM as a lead, contact, or both. Sure, you could first try performing a quick find search for contact, and then perform another quick find search for lead, but you probably prefer to look for her with a single search. The CRM 2013 release introduced a new app designed for tablets. One of the most loved features of that CRM for Tablets app was the capability to search across multiple types of records at once. Unfortunately, that same functionality was not available in the web application or Outlook client. With the CRM 2015 release, that exact same multi-entity quick find capability is now available on the web application and the Outlook client. Now let's take a quick look at this functionality within the CRM web application. Here I've opened up my web browser and accessed my CRM organization. I'm on the sales dashboard. In prior releases, if I was going to search for a record such as Robert Lyon, I'd first need to go to a certain entity such as leads and look to see if I find that person here. And here this is not finding the record I'm looking for, so then I would have to switch maybe to contacts and perform another search here. And luckily this found the record I was looking for, but that can add up to a lot of time and it's not the ideal search experience. So with CRM 2015, now we have that same functionality that was available within CRM for Tablets to search across multiple entities at once. With the CRM 2015 release, one of the changes you'll notice is that up within the navigation bar, a new search text box has been added, and this is where you can perform your multi-entity quick find searches. So I can just type in a couple characters, press enter, and you can see it quickly return the list of contacts and leads that match that search criteria. And really what this is doing is it's doing the exact same thing as Quick Find. It's got the exact same search logic. That hasn't changed. It's just that it's performing multiple quick finds in the background and returning the results to a single page here. And it wasn't just searching against contacts and leads. If I click this filter over here, you can see the list of all the different types of entities that's currently searching against. And this is just the out-of-the-box configuration. Later on we'll show you how to configure this to search across multiple other types of entities with a maximum of 10 of them. So let me quickly do another search. First I'm going to show though that you can filter this down. That's another option here, is that you can use that as a way to filter down to only show a certain record type. You can turn that off, and now I'm going to search for Contoso. Here I just typed in the first three letters, and you'll notice that because of the way Quick Find works, where it's searching for records that start with those letters, it did return some cases that also start with those letters. So in this case I could have either used that filter to filter down to maybe just looking at the account entity, or I could type in a couple more characters to make that a little bit more specific. And here you can see now it's only returning the account and contact that matches that. And one of the other things you'll notice is that with the CRM 2013 release, functionality was added to be able to display an image within the record. And here, if you have an image associated with a record, it will display in your search results. If you don't have an image added, it'll just show the icon for that record type. Another thing to point out here is that these search results are displayed in a specific order. So in this example, you can see it displayed the list of accounts before contacts. When we get into the configuration section in a moment, you'll see that one of the options is to control which entities are searched across and which order they're displayed. So if you did want contacts before accounts, you could do that. Another thing to be aware of too is that besides using this as a way to search and find a record and then open it, there might be some times where you do a search and you find out that that record doesn't exist yet and you need to create that record. So here I searched for Contoso. Maybe that wasn't the Contoso that I was looking for. In that case, I can use this plus button next to the record type, and what that'll do is open up the quick create form for that record type, and you'll notice that it automatically populated that search term in for the record name. So I could fill in the rest of the details and save that record. Same thing if I did another search for Susan, you'll see that if I click the plus button, it'll automatically open up the quick create form for that type of record, which is a contact, and you'll see that the first name field is automatically populated with Susan. I could enter the last name, the rest of the details, and save, and that might save me a couple extra seconds. So now that you've seen how this functionality works out of the box, let's take a quick look at some of the configuration options that are available. So one of the things that we'll see is that within system settings, there is an option to control which entities are searched across, and within this dialog box you can also control the order of the search results. The first time you open this, you'll see that there are a number of predefined entities that are searched across. You can remove some of those, you can add some additional out-of-the-box entities, or any of your custom entities. One important thing to understand though is that there is a limit of 10 entities, so you cannot search across more than 10 entities, and these settings apply to your entire organization. The other important thing to make sure you understand is that this is using the exact same functionality as QuickFind for the search logic, and the way that QuickFind works is that the columns it searches across are not every column within that entity, it's the ones that you specify as the search columns, and that's defined within the QuickFind views. So we'll take a look at that later as well. To get to these configuration options, you simply go to Settings, and then within Settings, go to Administration. Within Administration, there's an option for System Settings. And if you scroll down here on this default tab, which is the General tab, you'll see that there's a Setup QuickFind section. And here I can click this button, and this displays the dialog where I can choose the order of these entities. So for example, I mentioned I could choose to make the contact entity display before account, so that was very simple. I can also choose to add some additional entities that I want to search across. So I could add any out-of-the-box entity or any of the custom entities that I might have. So I'm going to add product and note. I can save them here. And now when I do a search, you'll see it displays the products now that match that criteria. And also I would see that note is in my list of entities that it is searching across. The other thing I had brought up is that the columns that this searches across is not all the different columns across that record type. So for example, for account, it's not searching across every single field that you have for the account entity. It's using the exact same logic as QuickFind. So the way that you can see that is by going into Settings and Customization, go to Customize the System, expand the entities, and we'll use account as an example. And if I switch to Views, you'll notice that there is a QuickFind view that I can open up. So here is the QuickFind Active Accounts view. Within here you'll see an option for Add Find Columns, and this is where you control what are the different columns it's going to search across. So again, this is using the exact same logic as QuickFind. So here I can see that it's using the account name, it's searching across account number, and I can scroll through and see it's searching across the phone number field and maybe a couple other phone fields such as the main phone. So if I wanted to search across some other field, all I need to do is click that checkbox, save it, and then it'll begin searching across that column. If you are going to choose to add additional find columns for an entity, keep in mind a couple different things. The first thing is that there are performance implications with doing this. So it might be necessary for your business requirements to search across a couple extra fields, and that's okay. But if you start adding a lot of extra fields, that could be noticeable when it comes to performance. Also, now with this feature searching across multiple entities at once, all those different fields across all those different entities are being searched across around the same time frame. So instead of a single quick find, maybe only searching across account and searching across 4 columns, if you have 10 entities, all with 10 columns, that's searching across 100 different columns within the database. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that depending on how many columns you add, how large a data size you have, that can impact the time it takes to return that data for that search. The other thing to keep in mind too is that for each column that you mark as a find column, to keep that performance as good as possible, CRM will automatically add an index in SQL for that column. So there's a little bit of extra storage overhead for each column that you mark as searchable. For this demonstration, I'm not going to add any additional find columns for the account entity. So I'm going to click Cancel, close this out, but I do want to look at the note entity because that is one of the entities that I chose to add to the list of entities that will be searched across. So I'm going to locate the note entity. And again, I will click Views. And within Views, there should be a quick find for annotations, which is the same name for the note entity. So here you'll see Add Find Columns. If I look at this, you'll see that only the title column is searched across for the note entity. One reason I wanted to show this entity is just to re-emphasize that it's important to understand which columns are being searched against. So if you've enabled some entities and you're wondering why certain data is not being returned in your search results, first look to see where that data is stored, and then see is that column enabled as one of the search columns. In this example, you can see that only the title column is enabled for search. And if you're familiar with this entity, when you create a new note, it's not required to populate a title. You might only populate the description field, and that field is not enabled by default. You'll see I have a checkbox here to enable this one and click OK, but I don't see a save and close option. I can only close this. The reason for this is if we look at this view, you'll see that the customizable option for this is set to false. So this specific entity for this view, with this view, is not customizable. So for the note entity, you can't choose to add any additional columns. For any other entities though, where you can control the columns, you do want to make sure that what you're searching for is enabled as one of the search columns, otherwise it won't be returned in your search results. Let's review a couple of the important considerations for this feature. The first thing to understand, as mentioned a few times, is that this is really just performing quick find. It's just performing multiple quick finds at once across different entities and displaying the results on a single page. So if you're not familiar with how quick find works, the first thing to understand is that it's always doing a search for starts with. So if you're searching for the word ski, it's going to look across all those search columns for the entities for any of those columns that start with the word ski. So if you're searching for the word ski, it would not find the record Alpine Ski House, because it's basically looking across all those columns and only looking at ones that start with the first three letters being ski. So if it gets past that and sees it's not a match, it would continue on and not find that record. It is possible though to use a wildcard, and the way you would do that is enter an asterisk before your search term. The important thing to understand with that is that it's not able to utilize the indexes in SQL, so it's not going to be as fast as it would be if it was able to use an index. There are not full text indexes across all these different columns. So if you search for the word ski, it's going to have to scan through the entire text for every one of those fields to see if it contains the word ski, which is going to take longer to return than just a starts with search. So you can think of this like a phone book. If you looked at the phone book and the phone book was showing you a list of all the different companies and that was organized by name, that's kind of like an index on the name column for the account entity. If you're searching for the word Alpine, you can look at the phone book and quickly find all the companies that start with the word Alpine. But if you're trying to find any company that had the word ski in anywhere in its name, that would take a lot longer. You'd have to search through every single row within the phone book, and that's basically what SQL would have to do because there's not a full text index that searches across the entire column here. It has to go row by row to find every single match. So just like the number of companies that are listed in the phone book would impact how long it would take you to search row by row, the same thing applies for the number of accounts that exist in the CRM database. If you have 10 million of them, that would take longer than searching across every row of only 100 records. So thankfully, SQL is much faster than searching manually through a phone book, but it is important to understand that there are performance implications with performing a search like this. Another variable that would affect the performance of a wildcard search like this is the amount of data in the column that is being searched against. So if you have something like the name field on account, let's say that has a maximum width of 250 characters, that would be faster to search against compared to another column that is a multi-line text field that has up to 4,000 characters of data. If you think about a starts with search, it's really just having to look at the first three characters to see if it starts with the word ski, to decide if it's a match or not. If you're doing a contain search by adding that wildcard, it's having to look through all the data in each of those columns for every single row. So it is going to impact how much time it takes to return that data. Another thing to understand with quick find is that if you type in multiple words, it's going to be looking for those words to be together. So with a search engine, you might type in Alpine and house, and that might return Alpine ski house, but it would not do that if you use quick find. If you type in Alpine and then space and then the word house, it would be looking for an account that starts with the word Alpine space house. So it would not find Alpine ski house. Another thing that's important for your users to understand is that this is not searching across all entities in the system. As you saw during the configuration, you're specifying which entities to search across, and there is a maximum of 10. The last thing to discuss is that if you're a developer and you're looking to take advantage of something like this as part of a custom app, be aware that there is currently no public API support for this. The SDK does provide the ability to do searches for records, like individual retrieves for different entity types, but there isn't a multi-entity quick find capability that's available within the SDK. You'd have to do something similar where it was searching across individual entities and then displays the results together. The last topic I want to review related to multi-entity search is related to the Outlook client. So at the beginning of this section, I'd mentioned that this functionality is available in the web application and Outlook client. It really works the exact same way. It's just that the way you get to it is slightly different. In the web application, you saw that the search text box was within the navigation bar at the top. Within the Outlook client, you don't have the nav bar, you have the ribbon at the top of Outlook. And within that ribbon, you would see that there's a search option. And clicking that would take you to the search functionality that would really work the exact same way as what you're seeing within the web application. Just a slightly different experience of how you get there. The other thing to point out too is that if you open up an individual record in there, you'd also see that there is a command bar, and then within there you have the ability to do the multi-entity quick find from within a record. The majority of this session has been focused on multi-entity quick find, but one of the other changes is related to advanced find. Advanced find is another way that you can perform searches within CRM, and one thing that's changed is the discoverability of this. Within the CRM 2013 release, that was an option that was available on the command bar. So the way you had to access it was to go to an area such as sales and open up an entity, and most entities, not all of them, had an option for advanced find. And with the initial release of CRM 2013, only the first 5 commands were displayed on the command bar. So what that meant is only up to here, up to export to Excel, would have shown on the command bar. All the additional buttons after that would have shown up underneath this ellipsis button. So unless your users clicked that button, they would have never even seen the option for advanced find. And even after the Spring 14 release, now that it does display up to 7 commands before going into the overflow menu, you might have custom buttons that you've added, which might make this the 8th or 9th button, which again would mean that it's going to show up in the overflow menu, and it's not as discoverable to your users. So with the CRM 2015 release, instead of this button always being on the command bar within the different areas, which might appear in different spots depending on how many buttons are on that specific area, it's now in a consistent spot no matter where you're at. It's been added to the navigation bar, just like the multi-entity quick find search. So just like at the top of the navigation bar, multi-entity quick find was added here. Right next to it is an icon that you can click that'll open up advanced find. So this is something you'll want to make sure that your users are familiar with, where if they're used to looking underneath an entity and looking at the command bar, they should actually be able to easily find this now using the navigation bar. But they might not see the advanced find option, so you do want to educate your users on this. That advanced find button is gone from the command bar. It could be added back, but because it's on the navigation bar, it should be easier for people to discover. Let's take a very quick look at the changes to the advanced find functionality in CRM 2015. So as mentioned before, the way you typically accessed advanced find is you had to go to an area like this, and somewhere on the command bar there was typically an advanced find button. Depending on how many buttons were on there, and if you had any custom buttons, that option might have appeared in different spots. So for example, under one entity it might have been over here, on another entity it might have been over here, on some other entities it might have been in the overflow menu, and on some other entities it didn't appear at all. Now you'll see it doesn't appear anymore, and that's because it's been added to the global navigation bar. So even though it's hidden by default, you could basically choose to enable that again using the ribbon XML. So you could choose to not hide that. It is hidden by default because it is available now no matter where you're at, and it's always available from a consistent place. You just click up here and it'll pop up that advanced find dialog. And that's the last topic for this session. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the changes to the search functionality in the CRM 2015 release.